It was a quiet Sunday morning in a town where nothing bad ever happened. Until it did. A single phone call shattered the peace, leaving a family in ruins and a community asking one haunting question. How could this happen here? But as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. A web of lies, a betrayal so shocking it defied belief, and a truth buried so deep it almost stayed hidden forever. This is the story of how one moment changed everything, and how the search for answers revealed a darkness no one saw coming. A quiet night turns deadly. It was just before midnight on a quiet summer night in Griffin, Georgia. Inside a small home on Sunnybrook Drive, a young man lay motionless on a mattress, blood pooling beneath him from a gunshot wound to his chest. His girlfriend of 7 years, Mary Catherine Higdon, knelt beside him, her voice breaking as she screamed into the phone for help. She told the 911 operator it was an accident, a horrible mistake. But when police arrived, they froze. The kitchen was a wreck. Plates smashed, food flung across the floor like a storm had passed through. This didn't look like an accident. It looked like rage. What happened in that house? Who was telling the truth? Was Steven Freeman? Steven Freeman was the kind of guy everyone loved. Born on January 1st, 1995, in Thomaston, Georgia, he grew up in nearby Griffin, surrounded by a tight-knit family. His parents, Troy and Jennifer, poured their hearts into giving Steven and his brother Blake a happy childhood. Steven was always smiling, always finding a reason to laugh. Even on tough days, he lived for the outdoors, fishing by the river, camping under the stars, or hunting with his dog by his side. In high school, he met Mary Catherine Higdon, a year older, with a bold spirit and a love for adventure that matched his own. They clicked instantly, spending weekends exploring the woods or casting lines into quiet lakes. To their friends, they were the perfect couple, inseparable and full of life. But behind closed doors, something darker was brewing, something no one saw coming. The night everything changed. On August 1st, 2018, that darkness spilled over. Just before 11 p.m., Mary Catherine called 911, sobbing that she'd accidentally shot Steven. She said she was handing him a gun when it fired, that she didn't know it was loaded. Police rushed to their Sunnybrook Drive home, finding Steven barely clinging to life. Paramedics worked frantically, but he died at Spalding Regional Hospital minutes before midnight. Mary Catherine was hysterical, repeating that it was a mistake, that she loved him, but the scene didn't add up. The kitchen was trashed, food strewn across the counters, dishes shattered. Officers noticed the smell of alcohol on her breath. And Mary Catherine wasn't just any girlfriend. She worked at a gun shop, trained to handle firearms with care. So how could this happen? Was it really an accident, or was there something she wasn't telling? Relationship with hidden cracks. Let's step back to understand their story. Steven and Mary Catherine had been together for 7 years, since their high school days. They shared a love for the outdoors, often camping with friends who saw them as a dream couple. But friends also noticed Mary Catherine's temper. She could be possessive, quick to snap. Steven confided in a few close friends that she'd pointed a gun at him during arguments, laughing it off like it was a joke. He laughed too, but his eyes told a different story. In the months before that fateful night, Steven was pulling away. He told a friend he was done with the fighting, the constant tension. He had a plan to leave, to start fresh somewhere new. He'd lined up a job and a place to stay, set to move out on August 3rd, just 2 days after shooting. Did Mary Catherine know he was planning to walk away? Did that push her to a breaking point? Red flags in the investigation. The investigation quickly raised red flags. The kitchen mess wasn't just a mess. It suggested a fight, maybe a violent one. Food was thrown, plates broken, as if someone had lost control. Then there was the gun itself. Forensic experts found grease on the magazine and slide, indicating it had been loaded recently, possibly right before the shooting. Detective Adam Trammell later showed in court how loading a Glock 42 could leave such marks, suggesting Mary Catherine prepared the weapon after an argument. This wasn't the action of someone caught off guard. And the blood spatter told another story. It showed Steven was likely sitting or lying down when shot, not standing as Mary Catherine claimed. Her story was starting to crack, and her behavior didn't help. She'd swing from tears to eerie calm, leaving officers uneasy. Confession lost the static, but one piece of evidence didn't make sense. During her interrogation, Mary Catherine reportedly confessed to shooting Steven in a fit of anger. It was a bombshell moment, until they realized the audio was useless. Feedback had corrupted the recording, drowning out her words. Without that confession, the prosecution's case hung on shaky ground. What did she really say in that room? Was it the truth, or just another layer of the mystery? Shifting stories in self-defense. Mary Catherine's story kept shifting, and that made her look guilty. First, she said she was handing Steven the gun when it fired. Then, she admitted she might have tossed it to him. Tossed it? For someone who worked at a gun shop, trained in firearm safety, that was unthinkable. It would take 5.75 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger on that Glock 42, not something that happened by accident. And during the trial, she introduced a new claim, self-defense. She said Steven was abusive, that she feared for her life that night, but she hadn't mentioned abuse to police at the scene. The defense showed threatening texts from Steven, sent a year earlier after breakup, to back her story. Were those texts proof of a pattern, or just a moment of anger? Her changing stories left everyone wondering what to believe, revisiting the tragedy. In our last episode, we explored the tragic death of Steven Freeman, shot by his girlfriend Mary Catherine Higdon in their Griffin, Georgia home. Mary Catherine claimed it was an accident, but the evidence suggested otherwise. One crucial piece was her alleged confession during police interrogation, but the audio recording was corrupted, leaving only the officer's testimony that she admitted to shooting Steven in anger. Without that recording, the case took a different turn. Now, let's see what other evidence came to light and how it shaped the trial. Police missteps at the scene. When police arrived at the scene, they found the kitchen in disarray, food scattered, dishes broken, indicating a possible altercation. However, their decision to move the gun from its original position raised eyebrows. They claimed it was for safety, fearing Mary Catherine might reach for it, but the prosecution argued that standard procedure would be to secure the suspect, not the evidence. By moving the gun without documenting its position, they potentially compromised the integrity of the scene. This mistake allowed the defense to cast doubt on the reliability of the physical evidence, suggesting that it could have been tampered with or misinterpreted. A toxic relationship unraveled. To fully understand what led to that night, we need to delve into Steven and Mary Catherine's relationship. Friends described it as toxic. Steven's best friend, Thomas Skinner, testified that while they seemed happy at first, things turned sour. At first, I really liked her, Skinner said, but things started getting more toxic. Fighting, arguing, verbally fighting. He recalled instances where Mary Catherine would call Steven dozens of times a day and get angry if he didn't answer. Another friend, Elijah Varela, testified that Mary Catherine bragged about her expertise with guns and would use that knowledge to intimidate Steven during arguments. Varela said Steven was planning to leave her, but she always managed to pull him back with emotional manipulation, a defense of abuse and control. On the other hand, Mary Catherine's defense team painted her as a victim of abuse. Her attorney read out text messages from Steven filled with expletives and threats after she briefly dated someone else. In one message, Steven wrote, "The more you say, the worse it'll be when I get home." Another said, "You might end up in the red room tonight," which Mary Catherine explained was a reference to being tied up and hit. She testified that Steven controlled every aspect of her life and had physically assaulted her on multiple occasions. She claimed that on the night of the shooting, she told him she wanted to leave, and he became violent, prompting her to grab the gun in self-defense. The absence of abuse evidence. Interestingly, despite these claims, there were no police reports or medical records documenting any abuse. The prosecution pointed out that if Steven was as violent as she described, there should have been some documentation or witnesses to his behavior. However, Mary Catherine explained that she never reported the abuse because she was ashamed and thought she could change him. She also feared judgment from their small-town community. This lack of corroborating evidence became a key point for prosecution, suggesting that her claims were fabricated to justify her actions, the gun that raised suspicion. But there's a detail that doesn't fit neatly into either narrative. The gun had grease on its magazine and slide. This suggested that it was loaded recently, possibly just before the shooting. If Mary Catherine truly didn't know the gun was loaded, why was there fresh grease on it? This discrepancy raised suspicions that she might have prepared the gun with intent, contradicting her claim of an accident. Expert testimony on the Glock 42. During the trial, Detective Adam Trammell took the stand to explain the significance of the grease. He demonstrated how loading a Glock 42 involves handling the magazine and slide, which can transfer grease from the hands to the gun. He suggested that Mary Catherine loaded the gun shortly before the shooting, which would mean she knew it was ready to fire. Additionally, a firearms expert testified that the Glock 42 requires a deliberate pull the trigger to discharge, with a trigger pull weight of approximately 5.5 pounds. The expert emphasized that accidental discharges are rare with this model, especially when handled properly. This testimony cast doubt on Mary Catherine's story that the gun went off by mistake while she was handing it to Steven. Blood spatter contradicts the narrative. Moreover, blood spatter analysis indicated that Steven was likely sitting or lying down when he was shot, not standing as Mary Catherine initially claimed. The blood was concentrated in one area on the mattress, suggesting he didn't move after being hit. This contradicted her later self-defense claim that he was coming towards her. Media shapes public perception. As the case unfolded, the media played a significant role in shaping public opinion. Local news outlets were quick to report on the shooting, often with sensational headlines that presumed Mary Catherine's guilt. For example, WSB-TV ran a story titled, "Teacher's Assistant Accused of Murdering Boyfriend," which included interviews with Steven's family expressing their shocking grief. Neighbors told reporters they had heard arguments from the couple's home before, suggesting a history of conflict. These reports influenced how the community viewed Mary Catherine, with many believing she was guilty based on initial coverage. A divided community online. On the other hand, some true crime enthusiasts and bloggers took a different stance, questioning whether she was a victim of domestic abuse who acted in self-defense. Online forums and social media were abuzz with debates, each side presenting their arguments based on the available information. This public discourse created a charged atmosphere around the trial, making it challenging for potential jurors to remain impartial in such a small town where everyone knew each other. A cliffhanger before the verdict. As the jury deliberates amid a storm of conflicting evidence, a new detail emerges to heighten suspense. A text message sent to Mary Catherine just hours before the shooting. This message, shrouded in mystery, could hold the key to the entire case. Sent in the late afternoon, the text landed on Mary Catherine's phone mere hours before the fatal shot rang out. Its proximity to the tragedy suggests it may have influenced her mindset or actions in those critical final moments. The message itself was cryptic and unsettling, hinting at a secret with the power to unravel everything. Was it a warning, a threat, or an emotional trigger? Its vague wording teases without revealing, leaving us desperate for more. Sent by someone close to the couple, the sender's identity remains elusive. Friend, family, or foe, their connection to Mary Catherine and her husband only deepens the intrigue, promising revelations to come. This text might explain Mary Catherine's choices that night, perhaps the final push in a series of events that led to disaster. Its role in the story is undeniable, a thread begging to be pulled. Tension in the courtroom. Picture a courtroom in Griffin, Georgia, holding its breath as the jury files back in after just 4 hours. Everyone's waiting to hear the fate of Mary Catherine Higdon, accused of shooting her boyfriend, Steven Freeman, in a case that's torn a small town apart. In our last episode, we left you with a haunting question. Why was there grease on the gun that killed Steven? Detective Adam Trammell testified that loading a Glock 42 leaves grease on the magazine and slide from your hands, suggesting Mary Catherine loaded it right before the shooting. This wasn't the accident she claimed. It pointed to intent. But would it be enough to convict her? Let's dive into the final chapter of this chilling story, where the truth slips through the cracks and leaves us questioning everything. The verdict that shocked the town. The jury's verdict hit like a thunderclap. On June 26, 2019, Mary Catherine was acquitted of all charges: malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and firearm possession. Jurors later admitted they had doubts about her innocence. Some believed she pulled the trigger in anger, but the prosecution's case was riddled with holes. The corrupted audio of her alleged confession, where she reportedly admitted to shooting Steven in a fit of rage, was unusable. Officers had moved the gun from its original spot without taking photos, a mistake that let the defense argue the evidence was tainted. And Steven's phone, which could have held crucial texts or calls, was never recovered without hard proof. The jury couldn't convict beyond a reasonable doubt. The courtroom fell silent as Mary Catherine walked free, leaving Steven's family stunned and heartbroken. A mother's fight for awareness. The aftermath was a gut punch for Steven's loved ones. His mother, Jennifer Freeman, stood outside the courthouse, tears in her eyes, vowing to keep her son's memory alive. She became an advocate for domestic violence awareness, speaking at local events to highlight that abuse doesn't spare any gender. Steven, she said, was a victim of a toxic relationship, his kindness exploited until it cost him his life. Her work has reached hundreds, raising awareness about hidden dangers in relationships. Meanwhile, Mary Catherine slipped back into a quiet life, moving away from the spotlight. She took a job at a daycare, trying to start over, but in Griffin, whispers followed her. Neighbors still talk about that night, some calling her a manipulator who dodged justice, others wondering if she was a victim too. The town remains divided, unable to agree on what really happened. A chilling final clue. But there's one final twist that keeps this case alive in our minds. Just days before the shooting, Mary Catherine's phone revealed a chilling detail. She'd searched how to clean a gun while at her babysitting job. She claimed it was routine, tied to her gun shop work. But the timing was eerie, hours before Steven's death. Pair that with her browsing violent adult websites that same day, which she said was to please Steven. Prosecutors argued these searches showed a mindset far from innocent, hinting at premeditation. Why would someone so skilled with firearms need to look up cleaning tips? And why those websites, if not to fuel a darker impulse? These clues, combined with Steven's plan to leave her on August 3rd, just 2 days later, suggest a woman desperate to hold on to a relationship slipping away. Was it fear, rage, or something colder that drove her that night? The cost of tragedy. The financial and personal toll of this tragedy stretched far beyond the courtroom. Mary Catherine's parents poured over $100,000 into her defense, draining their savings to hire top attorneys. The stress fractured their family, with some relatives cutting ties, believing she was guilty. Steven's family faced their own burdens, spending nearly $15,000 on his funeral and legal fees to pursue justice. Jennifer took on extra jobs to cover the costs, all while grappling with grief. Mary Catherine's life now is modest. She earns a low wage at the daycare, living in a small apartment, far from the vibrant girl who once loved camping with Steven. Her social media is private. Her friends few. Steven's mother, though, has found purpose in her advocacy, but it's a heavy load. She speaks of sleepless nights, haunted by the thought that justice slipped away. These personal costs remind us that tragedy ripples outward, touching everyone in its path, a mirror to the messy heart of human conflict. This case isn't just a story, it's a mirror. It shows how love can twist into something dark, how justice can falter when evidence fails. Was Mary Catherine a battered woman fighting for her life, or a controlling partner who couldn't let go? The truth lies somewhere in those unanswered questions, buried in a small Georgia town. If cases like this grip you, pulling you into the messy heart of human conflict, our channel has more. Check out our new series, Latin Crimes, for stories that'll keep you up at night. And grab our book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers, on Amazon. It's packed with mysteries just as wild. Share your thoughts below. Did Mary Catherine get away with murder, or was she a victim too? Let's talk about it. Steven's story reminds us that sometimes the real monster hides in the life we think we know.